Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Everyone, how you doing? Welcome into the program. So today on the show, we have computer and technology news, and we have a ton of different stories. Just a few that we didn't get to from yesterday. I think we have about 4 of those, but then we have many, many more that are from today, and there's a lot of stuff going on. So, and of course that includes the recent step down from Blizzard. That includes Zoom and their huge fine that they got. That includes China rebranding video games, or I should say online games, so probably not all video games, but they are rebranding them as electronic drugs because, if you are not helping the, if you're not helping the Communist Party, then you are wasting time, and hey, it might as well be a drug, right? Well, everyone, we have that and more to talk about here on Computer America, so sit back, relax, and let's go ahead and get into it. But first, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, past shows, future shows, everything that you need to know about the program and everything that we do, including articles, reviews, links to social media, the podcast. If you can't catch us live on IRN, then the podcast is the next best place to hear that. And everyone, go ahead and check that out, computeramerica.com. Now, all that being said, why don't we go ahead and get started with computer and technology news brought to you by Computer America. So, I think that for our first story, we'll do probably the biggest story of the day, and there's probably not a true biggest story because, there's a lot of fun stories and a lot of important stories, but let's see, the best story. Okay, how about... This one's kind of fun, and this is fun if you've been paying attention to the news cycle, for a number of years now, and everything to do with DirecTV and AT&T. AT&T notably purchased DirecTV back in 2015 for $49 billion, and everyone at the time there, really said, and myself included, said that AT&T was just after the subscribers. They were not actually after any kind of infrastructure. They were not after satellite television. They were not after any kind of proprietary technology there. No, and that was made very clear over the course of their owning it. Not even to say in 2019 when they tried to spin off and essentially look for a buyer for DirecTV, but the number of years that they had kind of pillaged DirecTV left a very, very unappetizing meal for anyone who may have come up and snapped that up. Now, DirecTV is officially going to finish what it started earlier this year and actually be a full-blown spinoff. Because remember, AT&T launched AT&T Uverse. They launched their own line of internet subscribers and cable subscription. Really, DirecTV overlapped with so many of these subscribers, and I, as a former DirecTV customer when this all happened, I kind of saw the writing on the wall when they were trying to push people away from DirecTV and they were trying to push people into Uverse. Now, all this came to a head, and I believe this is going to finish off here in just a couple of days. But yeah, DirecTV is now its own company after AT&T closed the deal with private equity firm TPG, which it first announced back in February. Under their agreement, TPG would own 30% of the spinoff, while AT&T will retain about 70% of the ownership. And I'm sure that there's a deal in place to probably whittle that down even further. Now, as its own company, DirecTV will no longer operate under AT&T and will own and run the AT&T TV and Uverse video services under a single brand known as DirecTV Stream. So clearly trying to break into streaming still, but yeah, DirecTV is kind of a hollow shell of what it once was. The new spinoff says customers won't even feel the transition. The streaming services will continue to be available and they won't be blindsided by hidden fees. Probably for now. AT&T received $7 billion in cash for the sale, but which is of course the tiny fraction that it spent back in 2015. Although to run the numbers real quick, let's see. So $7 billion versus $49 billion, but they retain 70% ownership. So let's just say a third, and they get to retain 2/3. That means that they get to keep $14 billion because again they own 70%. And and then they essentially sold it for $7 billion. That means that altogether you're looking at about $22 billion. Yeah, DirecTV depreciated by half. It's worth half what it was back in 2015. Not the best business sense. Now, back then, AT&T CEO Randall Stevenson said that combining DirecTV and AT&T is all about giving customers more choices for great video entertainment integrated with mobile and high-speed internet service. And according to the LA Times, AT&T has lost 40% of DirecTV's original subscriber number since then. And again, that AT&T has no one to blame other than themselves. They were actively pushing people away from DirecTV. So, yep, that's certainly the case. Now, 40% less, and in the second quarter of 2021, DirecTV reported having 15.4 million premium video subscribers. So, yeah, quite a huge decline in just a number of years. The telecom giant has been trying to offload it since 2019, and this is also in conjunction with AT&T and Warner Media, and of course everything that's happening with HBO Max. With HBO, Time Warner, and Discovery, which is going to be its own separate company. And that whole thing says that it's expected to close in mid-2022, 4 years after AT&T finalized the $85 billion acquisition of Time Warner. So both that deal and this DirecTV spinoff will help AT&T's debt reduction efforts, and as they note, it has taken several steps, including selling off assets over the past few years to reduce the debts it had acquired due to its massive multimedia acquisitions. And it certainly did. If they want to save some, money, there's a location not too far from where I live that is in the middle of a mall, and don't get me wrong, the mall is already probably some of the cheapest real estate you can get right now because, hey, who goes to the mall? But yeah, at the mall, there's a location that always has like its like that cage half pulled down, no people in it, and I feel like it almost serves as like a half billboard for AT&T, but it just looks so depressing having no one in there and no one talking to customers, and it's yeah, I think AT&T, the company, is still struggling and trying to find its new direction, but clearly offloading its media assets, consolidation, and I don't think that this sell-off of DirecTV is going to help customers with more competitive pricing. More, it's getting things off the books that were pulling down probably their more successful parts of their business, including, cell phone, mobile carriers, and internet service providing. So it's probably more about getting bad parts off of their account. So DirecTV, we hardly knew you, but hey, it's going to stick around. So if you're a current subscriber, enjoy it while you can. That seems to be the bottom line here. Now, that was story number one. Story number two, and this one I'm actually kind of curious about. Apple. They are notorious for their Apple App Store. They are very protective of what apps go on there. And don't get me wrong, they miss sometimes, and they do let spyware, malware, any kind of malware get onto their store every now and again. But This is one of the first ones I've heard for, kind of for COVID reasons. And it's about Unjected. So clearly, when you get a vaccination from, for the COVID-19 vaccine, you get injected. So Unjected makes sense that they are an anti-vax dating app. Well, I did not see the dating part, but yeah, they are anti-vaccination. I don't know why people would celebrate the idea that they can, meet people who are not protected against COVID-19, but love takes all forms, and I guess all intelligence levels. So here we go. This is from Business Insider saying that Apple on Saturday removed Unjected, a dating and community app for unvaccinated people, from its app store in a move that the app owners likened to censorship. Okay, is it censorship to deny people an app in your app store to spread a global pandemic virus amongst themselves? And, really the main purpose of it, of Unjected, is to, they kind of made the linchpin is that, this is all about COVID. And man, what a horrible little idea they had here. Now, they said, quote, apparently we are considered too much for sharing our medical autonomy and freedom of choice. That was Shelby Thompson, Unjected founder, said in a video posted on Instagram, saying, so of course Apple removed us. Yes, because they are too free, too smart, too autonomous. They were censored. There you go. The app violated Apple's policies for COVID-19 content, an Apple spokesperson told Insider on Saturday, and the company cited published interviews in which Unjected founders said that their app was for like-minded, unvaccinated individuals. Saying Unjected previously has been rejected from the App Store, but Apple reinstated it after updates, the tech giant said. Now, the founders then asked Unjected users to avoid anti-vaccination buzzwords, including jabbed and microchip. Okay, yeah, microchip. That's always one of the funniest ones, but it's kind of sad that people actually believe that that's a possibility. By trying to trick Apple's reviewers, the app again violated the App Store policies, saying, there you go. And that's what the Apple spokesperson said. Bloomberg News on Saturday reported that Apple removed the app after being contacted by a reporter. Unjected posted a screenshot of the Bloomberg News story saying, "We must use our voices. We are fighting the censorship of our freedoms, and we won't stop." Now, Unjected launched in May as a dating app, and one Twitter user called it OkCupid, so Q being, of course, the letter Q, and I'm sure that they are referencing the idea of, Q and that whole cluster mess that is, but had recently rolled out additional features. One was a list of businesses that respect our autonomy and promote freedom. Yay. The company posted a screenshot of Apple takedown message in which part said, specifically, your social networking app inappropriately refers to the COVID-19 pandemic in its concept or theme. And again, because this whole thing is centered around the COVID-19, like if you want to make a dating app, go for it. If you want to make a dating app for personal freedoms, if you want to, for, let's just say being a libertarian, I guess, might fall under this category, go for it. But to make a divisive issue, to try to say that this is, a hot button issue that is enough for people to date. And by the way, dating apps are already notoriously lopsided male to female. I can only imagine the male to female ratio on this thing. And they say that it was downloaded about 18,000 times. That thing had to be like 17,995 guys to like 5 chicks. Like that had to be. I could not imagine it was very helpful for anyone. Now, the company posted as we said, Apple's policy required COVID-19 health and safety information to come from recognized sources, including government, deeply credentialed companies, and non-governmental organizations focused on health. Unjected said that, where they had about 25,000 followers, let's see. So, followers that it had deleted features, including a social feed and blood bank, in an attempt to stay in the App Store, saying that we are looking into ways to get off of Apple and Google, but the easiest transition for us might be to make the website as great as possible, since they won't shut that down like the app. Although we have seen hosting companies that host websites actually take a hardline stance against people who spread misinformation. So even that's not a guarantee. Saying that we have an appeal to Apple, however, we don't expect that they will return our request. The app on Sunday is still available on the Google Play Store, where users mostly are giving it middling reviews, including amazing concept, but holy bleep, this app is practically unusable. I have so little hope for apps and these kind of pop-up apps or concepts or services or products that come out of a very timely and divisive issue. So there was that social media app that I think it was like Gab or something like that. There was Gab, and then there was another one that, again, not to get political, but obviously people on, it was like a Republican-focused freedom of speech kind of platform, and that was horribly unsafe. It was, kicked off of every hosting site. And then, of course, I think it was hosted somewhere in Turkey. It had no security features, chat logs, usernames, emails, passwords, all of it was stolen almost immediately. Whenever these services come out and you think, wow, that's so, that's fun for whatever reason. Well, don't trust it, because clearly they don't have a good track record, and it's so new, it's so quick, it might just be trying to capitalize on the immediacy of an issue. That's a little helpful advice from us here. Now, with that being said, story number three, let's go ahead and just get this one out of the way, because, it's a move that a lot of people did not see, but, some people might say that it's a good change, and I'm seeing more on the other side where it's like, wow, they did that? Okay, well, what is it going to change? And these are the people that I don't get. Now, I'm talking about J. Allen Brack stepping down from Blizzard Entertainment, saying that the Blizzard president, steps down amid sexual discrimination and harassment lawsuit, saying that 2 gaming industry veterans will take his place. Now, Blizzard Entertainment's leadership is in upheaval following a California lawsuit over sexual discrimination and harassment. Now, studio president J. Allen Brack, who was named in the lawsuit, is stepping down from his role, and saying that Executive Development VP Jen O'Neill and GM Mike Ybarra will take his place as co-leaders. Now, the company didn't formally explain the exit, but indicated a desire to change company culture. It said that O'Neill and Ybarra would strive to make Blizzard the most welcoming workplace possible, and help with rebuilding your trust. Now, so I want to comment on this, but let's go after this. Brack previously said that the company, in a company email, that he was against harassment and bro culture. Shocking, obviously. As massively overpowered noted, though, California accused Brack of taking no effective remedial measures to curb sexual harassment at the company. The executive allegedly held multiple conversations with an employee called Alex Afrasiabi. And I read that so much, but I never really have to say it out loud. So, Now, about his drinking and harassment of women, but didn't offer much more than counseling in an attempt to correct the behavior. Which clearly, if someone makes your other employees uncomfortable, makes sexual advances towards them, gets drunk in the office, now in a place of business, yeah, you would fire that person almost immediately. You would not allow that whatsoever. But they had been longtime Blizzard executives together. You know, they had worked on World of Warcraft and Warcraft in general. They had worked, closely over the years in the studio. And, hey, there's the idea of bro culture that he reportedly kind of fostered. Now, they said that there was certainly pressure on Blizzard to change leadership. Workers balked at the idea of dismissive initial response to the lawsuit, prompting a walkout protest, which, pretty much everyone at their California location walked out in protest. They said that Activision Blizzard chief Bobby Kotick even labeled the early reaction as tone-deaf and promised quick action to improve company culture. In that light, Brack's departure is not surprising. It's one of the fastest and easiest actions the company could take, and that is to remove someone who has been there for a long time. And this is my, this is where I kind of take offense from people who are fans of the company looking at this and going, this won't change anything, this won't help. He was a sacrificial lamb. And it's like, there's also this movement going on that Blizzard doesn't make good games anymore. They aren't, supporting their games. There's a real problem with development. They don't develop fast enough, so on and so forth. And it's like, there's so many complaints about Blizzard going around right now that it's honestly confusing when they finally make a change that will definitely have an effect. And that is to remove someone who's been there for 16 years. I mean, clearly, this is the president. The president sets the direction and the pace and, a lot of the higher level decisions that happen within the company. And if you want change, this is a good place to kind of make it. And I'm not saying that J. Allen Brack did not have any kind of creative influence on the games, but a lot of the people that still make the games, the artists, the game engine developers, the people still working on Overwatch, on the story, just a lot of the creative people are still there. They still have a job. And to change leadership addresses so many of people's concerns that they've had over the past couple of years that, again, it's very confusing when people, kind of take a look at this and go, oh, this isn't enough, or this isn't a good change, this isn't a big enough change. I really do feel like it is. And, for J. Allen Brack, I mean, from everything that I can tell about the guy, he, being too lenient with your friends, I think that a lot of people would have that same flaw with them, not taking complaints in the workplace seriously enough. I can't say that, other people in tech companies or gaming companies have not done the exact same thing. It is endemic in the culture of video games. To kind of say that, oh, he is the devil incarnate because of, his role in all of this. No, but clearly, it was best for the company. It was best for the employees. It was best for everyone to kind of move on. I'm sure that he was forced to do this in a lot of regards, but yeah, I'm sure that he'll land somewhere else with, undoubtedly with his other coworkers. And yeah, I think that this was the right move at the right time and should be seen as a good turning point, or at least a start of a good turning point for Blizzard. Hey, we'll wait and see, but it's hard to imagine that this isn't a good thing. Now, there you go. I'm sorry. It's hard to imagine that this isn't a good thing if you have problems with the current state of Blizzard and Blizzard Entertainment. There you go. Okay, now, our next story number 4, let's talk about China. It's so easy to talk about China because, it's so different to our Western ideals that it's almost dystopian when these things happen. So let's go ahead and talk about that. saying that shares slide after China brands online games electronic drugs, and shares, I'm sure they mean in, like Tencent and other video game companies, Riot Games as well, which is, of course, owned by Tencent. But yeah, Tencent and NetEase shares fell more than 10% in early Hong Kong trade before regaining some of those losses. And yeah, all because electronic drugs. I won't lie, sometimes video games do feel like that. They feel very addictive. They feel like they encourage you to use them often. But electronic drugs, when the science is still out on whether or not video games, lead to addiction, is one of those heavy-handed moves that obviously the Chinese government is kind of known for. Now, in recent months, authorities have announced a series of measures to tighten their grip on technology and private education companies. They say that an article published by state-run Economic Information Daily said many teenagers had become addicted to online gaming, and it was having a negative impact on them. The news outlet is affiliated with the official Xinhua News Agency. So the article cited Tencent's hugely popular game Honor of Kings, saying students were playing it for up to 8 hours a day, and asked for more curbs on the industry. Now, they have a quote here saying that no industry, no sport can be allowed to develop in a way that will destroy a generation. It said before going on to liken online games to spiritual opium. Strong words, not really based on fact or science, but on gut feelings, and saying that every kid is playing this for 8 hours a day is probably a gross oversimplification. But here we are. Now, they say that Tencent has said it would introduce measures to reduce children's access to and time spent on its Honor of Kings game. The company also said it plans to eventually roll out the policy to all of its games, which, if you don't recall, we talked about that about 2 months ago. The Chinese government mandated that of Tencent as well, limiting the amount of time that kids could play video games, and even make it so that I think it was like not the official government, but like if they were doing bad in school, then the private company would, or I should say the public company, but anyways, the company behind the video game would actually reduce the amount of time that they could play based on their grades and more. It's a very strange world to be to play video games over there. Now, they said that the recovery in share prices came as Economic Information Daily deleted the article from its account on WeChat social media platforms. Tencent also saw its share fall last week after being ordered to end exclusive music licensing deals with record labels around the world. Now, the move was aimed at tackling the technology giant's dominance of online music streaming in the country, saying that it currently controls more than 80% of China's exclusive music streaming rights after an acquisition in 2016. Tencent is very much beholden to the Chinese government. They're going to do everything that they can to continue to operate in there. And hey, if the government wants to at least, appear to have the facade of a free, or at least, a competitive market, then hey, that's going to be up to them. Now, they're saying that Tencent is only one of a number of Chinese companies listed in the U.S., and they mentioned that they are clamping down on technology and education industries, because the education one is also a big one. We don't really cover that because, hey, not that much about technology, but the private tutor system in China, very, very, very structured, in that obviously people with wealth will have way more access to better tutors, but also they'll have access to tutors who will actually take exams for them and cheat. Cheating is well known and well documented in Chinese education system. So yeah, looks like they're trying to get a handle on that as well, if they can. Now, They said that the new guidelines also restrict foreign investment in the industry, and the major shift in policy came as authorities tried to ease the financial pressures of raising children. Officials have been worried after China's latest census showed that the birth rate had fallen to the lowest in 7 decades. But China is rapidly developing. They are quickly moving from like that third world status to the second or first world status. I think they're very much in the second world status, but still they have this booming middle class that is coming up, and it's been proven that whenever people have more income, they're more affluent, birth rates go down. And yeah, I believe that's going to be a trend that is only going to continue. You could definitely look at Japan and see what happened in the 80s and 90s. And of course, their whole, Japan's whole generation issue that they're going to have to deal with soon. That's also a very interesting dichotomy that they're going to have to struggle with. Now, they're saying that officials, so it's one of the biggest ever overhauls of the country's $120 billion private tutoring sector, which is obviously huge. Now, with that being said, how about we go ahead and continue on to our next story. China's a whole beast. Like, clearly, we can have shows dedicated entirely and only to China, but we're not going to do that to you. Don't worry about it. Now, our next story that we can go ahead and cover here, this one actually came out yesterday, and just want to get out there because so many hacking events, and it's good to kind of keep tabs on them. EA was recently hacked, and they were extorted. So they had a bunch of leaked data. I think it was like 750 gigs of compressed EA data including the FIFA 21 source code. If you're wondering why that matters, well, as soon as you have the source code, you can of course make your own game. All you have to do is compile it, run it, and there you go. They're one of their best selling video games is now out there completely broken and for free. Now, they tried to extort them for money, but turns out it did not work. Now, the hackers who breached Electronic Arts last month have released the entire cache of stolen data after failing to extort the company and later sell the stolen files to a third-party buyer. It was dumped on an underground cybercrime forum on Monday, July 26, and is now being widely distributed on torrent sites. According to a copy of the file dump obtained by the Record, the leaked files contain the source code of FIFA 21 soccer game, including tools to support the company's server-side services. So if someone were to, start up their own servers and they could essentially have a complete clone of the current FIFA game out there, just kind of illegally hosted. There you go. Now, with that being said, how the breach took place, they said that it was disclosed on June 10th when the hackers posted a thread on an underground hacking forum to be in possession of EA data, which they were willing to sell for $28 million. Very hard to find a buyer for that price, because anyone knows that, let's say you decide that, I'm a basic criminal, but I'm going to get my hands on $28 million. I'm going to buy the source code from this thing. I'm going to be the exclusive owner of FIFA 2021 source code outside of EA. And I'm going to start up my own company, rebrand it to Stolen FIFA 2021, and people are going to pay me to, buy my video game that I stole, and they're going to pay me to run services that I'm going to steal. Yeah, they're going to get struck down so fast by any decent lawyer. there is zero chance that you could make any kind of money from this $28 million. At best, you take the source code and you run it through, and you kind of run through the code and try to find any way to exploit, hack, or sell cheats based on the source code. And that is, and even selling hacks or cheats is probably, pennies compared to the $28 million that you would spend up front. That is just, there was no way that anyone was ever going to pay $28 million for this. I'm sure that they were really just hoping for EA themselves to pay the ransom, hence the extortion. Now, in an interview with Motherboard, the hackers claimed to gain access to the data after buying authentication cookies for an EA internal Slack channel from a dark web marketplace called Genesis. The hackers said that they used the authentication cookies to mimic an already logged in EA employee's account and access their channel, and then trick an EA IT support staffer into granting them access to the company's internal network. So it was multi-layered. Stolen cookies, and, well, hey, someone was having themselves a good time with those cookies. From there, they proceeded to download more than 780 gigs of source code from the company's internal code repositories. And while initially the hackers hoped to earn a big payday from the EA hack, they failed to find any buyers on the underground market, as the stolen data was mostly source code that lacked any value for other cybercrime groups, most of which are interested in personal or financial data primarily. There you go. So initially, they released a cache of 1.3 gigs of FIFA source code on July 14th, only to release the entire data 2 weeks later after EA shunned their threats. Following the incident, we've already made security improvements and do not expect an impact on our games or our business. That's what they told the Record. They said that we are actively working with law enforcement on the ongoing criminal investigation. And they even include some screenshots over what was released, which is, just kind of source code files of the game. So what does this really mean for FIFA? It means that if someone were looking to actually steal the game and play just the base game, completely possible. Someone could run their own servers and people could connect to them, and that you can have a completely different version of FIFA other than EA. But the continuous updates, the kind of the changes, and if you wanted to play with anyone else who already owns a legitimate copy of FIFA, well, you're still going to have to go and connect to EA servers and buy a legitimate copy. I fail to see how this would have any kind of major impact on EA. And I'm sure that they know that, and I'm sure that's why they did not try at all to stop these people from really releasing these files. Very weak attempt at extorting data, but they tried their best. It Clearly, their end goal was to extort EA, but EA very smartly decided that there was little to no risk. So, there you go. And, okay, this next article, very reminiscent of yesterday's story. If you don't recall, yesterday we talked about the Pentagon and how they were working with artificial intelligence to monitor military satellite images to identify risk or security risk or events and warn themselves days in advance of something happening, because clearly nothing happens in a vacuum. There's going to be evidence that you are moving troops, that you are moving submarines, that you are moving aircraft. To be able to predict events before they happen means that you could potentially have negotiations before anything really drastic happens. That has a fundamental shift on the ability of the United States military. This next story, while not the military, does have a fundamental shift in the idea of encryption and decryption at its very core. And that is, if data is encrypted, then without decryption, that data is useless to whoever holds it. Because, it's supposed to be sealed, scrambled, locked away, completely unusable for anyone else. That's like the basis of a lot of our world. And to a certain extent, obviously there are different kinds of data, but when it comes to kind of our I don't want to say social data, social media, and of course our personal data, we hope that we only share our data with people that we trust, and that we kind of stand behind. Well, that leads us to this article about Facebook, and they are reportedly trying to analyze encrypted data without deciphering it. And that would change a lot. That would change a whole heck of a lot of the entire landscape of, social media in general. Now, Facebook is reportedly looking into analyzing the content of encrypted data without having to decrypt it. The company is recruiting artificial intelligence researchers to study the matter, and their research could pave the way for Facebook to target ads based on encrypted WhatsApp messages. Facebook could also use the findings to encrypt user data without affecting its ad targeting approaches, which clearly, if they want to protect people, encryption is the best tool that they can use, as the ones who are ferrying the data around. But if they're still able to pull all of their analytics and all of their, information points out of that encrypted data, what the heck is the point of the encryption? You think from a security standpoint, but also if you steal the, kind of the metrics that they are taking from the encrypted data, you might as well not encrypt that at all, because you could, you may not know the contents, but you know the who, the what, the why, the when, the where, pretty much everything about that message without knowing the message in particular. And that's just as dangerous. Now, they said that this area of research is called homomorphic encryption, which relies heavily on mathematics. Microsoft, Amazon, Google are also working on the approach. The aim of homomorphic encryption is to allow companies to read and analyze data while keeping it encrypted to protect the information from cybersecurity dangers and to maintain privacy. Let me just say, this kind of stuff never works, because let's say they have it 100% perfect. Still, at the end of the day, there's only going to be so many people, let's just say in South Florida, that are age 30, that are a white male, that pay attention to these topics, and also go here, and here every single day, work, home, business, whatever. There are 100% ways, even if you never say the person's name, you would know everything about that person. And that's part of the problem with social media, is that they collect so much personal data to sell you targeted ads that even without ever putting a name to you, your whole life is laid bare, and it's very easy to discern who is actually there. Now, Facebook told in the information it's too early for us to consider homomorphic encryption for WhatsApp at this time. Facebook could benefit from the tech in a number of ways. Protecting data without impacting the effectiveness of their ad targeting could allow Facebook to both meet its business goals and satisfy regulators who have expressed concerns about how they handle the information. And I would still express concerns about how they handle the information, considering, they're encrypting it, but they're also setting some aside for advertisers, and that's what you would need to be careful with. Now, in 2019, Facebook revealed plans to roll out end-to-end encryption for all of its messaging services, and later that year, US, UK, and Australia sent a joint letter to Facebook urging it to not push forward with the project without ensuring there will be no reduction in the safety of Facebook users and others, and without providing law enforcement court-authorized access to the content of communications to protect the public, particularly child users. Blah, blah, blah. Essentially, that's the government also pushing back against Facebook because, hey, if the government said, in US, UK, Australia, and I'm sure, the Five Eyes. If you want to look into that, that's a whole thing. But yeah, I'm sure that the Five Eyes love to read every bit of your Facebook messaging messages. However you slice it, encryption is a thorny issue for Facebook, whether or not it's able to analyze the data. So the governments don't want it. Facebook doesn't really want it. Security-minded people do want it. I'm sure that explain the issue well enough, and I would say that the majority of users would definitely want something like this, but it's also just not a very attractive topic. Security, encryption, so on and so forth. People just want to use the services for their convenience. They're not really into it for their security. So there you go. Easy enough. Story number 6. Story number 7. And yeah, we're still running great on time. We can definitely get through this. This one made headlines. I'm curious. So again, not to stray too far into politics, there's a bipartisan infrastructure bill that's working its way through Congress. And yeah, it's a 2,700-page document. And in the document, clearly, that's going to include a lot when it comes to technology, including last-mile infrastructure, faster internet, 5G, and that whole thing. Yeah, there's a lot of technology-minded stuff in there. Now, one of them, though, has been making a lot of headlines because it could mandate over the next 10 years that car companies actually have to, car companies have to include drunk driving. Let's see. There we go. Yeah, drunk driving detection systems in cars by 2027, I want to say. Or I should say, that's when car companies need to have something that says, this is what we're thinking about for distracted driving, drunk driving, that whole thing, innately in cars, or I believe as they called it, it was like passive monitoring for drivers, and yeah, have a solution for it. And then of course 3 years later have the ability to implement it into all new cars. So first spotted by Reuters, the clause orders that the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration to study the feasibility of various alcohol detection systems and establish a final set of rules within 3 years. After that period, automakers would have 24 months to comply with the new regulations. So there you go. And of course, this wouldn't go into effect for a number of years. So, they're saying that if the agency doesn't finalize a set of rules within 10 years, it will have to detail the hurdles it encountered in a report to Congress. So there's your 10 years. Do it or answer to Congress in 10 years. Now, they say that the provision does not lay out exactly what technologies that they should explore, other than the final product should passively monitor a driver to accurately identify whether they can safely drive their vehicle. And anti-drunk driving technology isn't the only new safety feature that they would require automakers to implement in vehicles. As per Bloomberg, other parts of the legislation would mandate automatic emergency braking, the inclusion of crash avoidance systems in new cars, and alerts that would remind drivers to check the back seats of their vehicle after exiting it. Now, and I'm assuming that would be to prevent the ice cream from melting in the back. Now, they say that the last feature would ideally help prevent parents from leaving their kids in the car on a hot day. Oh, my bad. Not ice cream. It's about kids. Save the kids. Yes. Don't leave your kids in hot cars. There you go. Now, the push to use technology to address drunk driving isn't surprising. And according to a 2020 report, they're saying that cars with built-in alcohol detection systems save as many as 9,000 lives in the U.S. every year. And that's during 2020. COVID, don't drive anywhere, stay at home as best you can, that whole thing. Still 9,000 lives. Over the past decade, drunk driving played a part in 30% of all roadway deaths. And, it's not that controversial of an issue to say that drunk driving is bad. The problem with drunk driving is that in a lot of cases, it hurts people who aren't really doing anything wrong. If you've ever seen a drunk driver on the road, yeah, they could hurt themselves, but more often than not, the people that end up dead in those situations are just unfortunately people who are just walking down the street or operating a vehicle safely. And then, of course, the drunk driver, plows into the back of them going 80 miles an hour off of a highway. It's, I'm all for it. Obviously, cars have become more computers than cars at this point. And yeah, let's go ahead and put these features that are that we know work. They're effective, that they work. The auto self-braking, the detection of drunk driving. Hey, I think that a lot of newer modern cars, that's kind of already expected. And in 10 years, if self-driving cars are still not a thing in 10 years, I would be honestly surprised. But yeah, we are going to inch our way closer and closer where every car that is purchased is going to have these emergency features just innately built into them, so that even if we aren't all riding around in self-driving cars, then we are all going to have cars that are capable of doing automatic features. That will be the next best thing. So there you go. That's that story. So not exactly require anti-drunk driving, but they'll at least explore the topic. And if it's possible, they will do it. If it's not, then they will have to answer for it. Okay, how about... this is a story, and I mean, yeah... not the most tech-focused story, but let's go ahead and talk about it anyways. Hobby Lobby. You know the one. Hobby Lobby founder Steve Green purchased a number of Iraqi artifacts on the black market and had them imported into the United States for a personal collection. Very strange, very no-no, because obviously spending your money to buy illegal black market goods and have them illegally shipped into the United States is a bad thing. Well, the Department of Justice repatriates looted Dream of Gilgamesh tablet and other artifacts back to Iraq. And they mentioned that during April 2003, the opportunistic looter stole 15,000 priceless cultural artifacts from the National Museum of Iraq, taking advantage of the evacuation of museum staff until U.S. forces were able to restore order. Although I will say, the invasion of Iraq, I mean, to say that the U.S. restored order, I mean, would there really have been unrest if it weren't for the United States military? But I digress. These artifacts have been showing up on the antiquities market ever since, after accompanied by forged or questionable claims of provenance. Thousands of them were purchased by billionaire Steve Green, founder of Hobby Lobby craft chain store, on behalf of the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. These artifacts included the so-called Dream of Gilgamesh tablet, a rare cuneiform text dating back to ancient Mesopotamia. And that part's really cool. I mean, clearly these things should be with their proper owners, which in this case is the Iraqi people. So the U.S. Customs agent seized the tablet in 2019, and last week, the U.S. District Court of New York ordered Hobby Lobby to forfeit the tablet so it could be returned to Iraq. An additional 17,000 looted artifacts are also being repatriated to Iraq, and saying that this is the largest return of antiquities to the country. And archaeological looting in Iraq has been going on for at least a century, with estimated revenue from the sale of stolen artifacts between $10 and $20 million annually. There you go. So the article is quite long. If you'd like more, we'll include it in the show notes. But yeah, a little bit of justice for quite an unsavory part of that country's looting. Very, very horrible to see, but glad that they're able to get it back. Now, we have time for one, maybe two more stories. How about talk about Zoom real quick. Because, we use Zoom here on the show. It's definitely a great service, but it rose so quickly that it's hard to imagine that they really had all of the security bugs and features. And, they definitely upped their security game after they got big, not before, and it really showed. Well, they, with the booming business that they've had, turns out that they were actually making a lot of money, and they are now being fined for not encrypting and sending data to Facebook and Google, saying that Zoom has agreed to pay $85 million to settle claims that it lied about offering end-to-end encryption and gave user data to Facebook and Google without the consent of users, saying that the settlement between Zoom and the filers of a class action lawsuit let's see. So, also covers security problems that led to rampant Zoom bombings. And Zoom bombings is, of course, when someone would post the meeting credentials on a forum, and then they would just come in and just interrupt the meeting without any chance of kicking them or blocking them. The idea of a waiting room or a private password didn't really happen until later. Like, all you needed was the address or at least a link for the meeting, and then anyone, anywhere could get into it at any point. Now, the proposed settlement would generally give Zoom users $15 or $25 each, and was filed Saturday at U.S. District Court for Northern District of California. It came 9 months after Zoom agreed to security improvements and a prohibition on privacy and security misrepresentations. So if you were a Zoom user back then, I'm assuming that you'd have to prove that you paid them. If not, then I guess just everyone gets $15 or $25. But yeah, $15, $25. Congratulations. $85 million watered down yet again to, lawyers and law enforcement. Now, as Ars Technica wrote in November, the FTC said that Zoom claimed it offered end-to-end encryption and, back in 2016, 2017, and that it complied with HIPAA. But in January 2019, in an April 2017 blog post and in direct responses and inquiries from customers, they're saying that in reality, Zoom did not provide end-to-end encryption at all. There you go. In fact, it was, they said that it conducted outside of Zoom's connector product. They said in real end-to-end encryption, only the users themselves have access to the keys needed to decrypt content, where essentially Zoom had access to the content of the calls. And we saw that really come into play where Zoom was handing over the keys to particular groups or meetings being held by, that whole Hong Kong incident, Free Hong Kong, and China requesting that these Zoom meetings be closed down for the type of content being discussed within the Zoom meeting. And that really kind of tipped people off that, these things are not encrypted. In fact, they're monitored. Now, so an amended class action complaint filed in May 2021 said that despite Zoom's false promises of end-to-end encryption, the encryption keys for each meeting are generated by Zoom servers, not by the client devices. So there you go, essentially saying that Zoom is not allowed to redefine what end-to-end encryption means. Because, well, let's face it, if a third party is handling the encryption keys, then, your end or the end of the receiving call, neither one of those is really handling the encryption. No, it's again reliant on a third party, and that's more of a end to middleman to end encryption, which is not really how any of that works. So the Zoom application used to include a text box that was revealed by hovering your cursor over the green lock on the top left corner, and said Zoom is using an end-to-end encryption connection, and the complaint noted, adding that Zoom has since changed the text to simply say that the session is encrypted. There you go. So the article goes on, a bit more, and So the settlement's required. We'll go ahead and wrap this up because we gotta, the show's ending soon. The settlement requires Zoom to not reintegrate the Facebook SDK for iOS into Zoom meetings for a year, and asks Facebook to delete any US user data obtained from the SDK. The security and transparency changes Zoom agreed to also include the following, and they mention essentially a lot of develop and maintain security feature, such as waiting rooms for attendees, essentially stuff that they've already started working on, but still have a long way to go. Still, Zoom would be required to better educate users about the security features available to protect the meeting and privacy through dedicated space on Zoom website and banner-type notifications. After the settlement was announced, Zoom gave media outlets a statement that did not admit any wrongdoing, and saying that we are proud of the advancements we have made on our platform and look forward to continuing to innovate with privacy and security at the forefront. Bullcrap, but hey, I'm glad that California was able to call Zoom to task. You can't just say that you do one thing and then clearly not do it. Everyone, that's about all the time we have here for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to tune in tomorrow, where I believe we'll have Mike Cermak. Everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.